Yeah, that reminds me of my journey of becoming a teacher, because in the first year of trying to be a teacher of this style, I just copied people. I mean, if Matthew stuttered, I stuttered, you know, whatever it was, however things were said. If he read poetry this way, I read it this way, which was a great thing because it got you inside the feel of where this person was coming from. But eventually I had to give that up. I had to come from my own feel and sort of create my own personal jargon, I suppose. But at any rate, be more authentically me and more willing to create new things and borrow new things from a wider spectrum of people. But some people I knew were slower than me doing this. So that did become an issue for some people, is how not to just be out there aping words, but genuinely speaking from your own life, about your own experience. I think that's still an issue.
The jargon, yeah, the jargon is a way for a community to talk to one another and get clear about what they're talking about. But at some point, if you don't internalize it and just start using your own words and your own experience and let go of any, you haven't really got it. It's not really real for you. When we first left the order, it was like we wanted to get married. We couldn't get married in the order. He wasn't even divorced at the time until the divorce came through and we finally got married. But our intention was we would eventually be in the order. You know, this would get worked out and we would be in the order. And as things moved along, we began, well, one thing we decided we really needed psychological moxie. That was one place that the order was behind things, that we were behind things, not just the order, but we were behind, and of course we'd been teaching the order. And so we took ourselves to California where we thought we would learn things that needed, and we did. I mean, we sucked up just about every kind of psychology there was. We lived with communities of people there, and we really did learn how to be psychologically aware, which affects your spirit. I mean, if you're a psychological dum-dum, it has a lot of effects on the spirit. I mean, those are intertwined in so many ways. But as time went on, it began to be clear that we didn't need to go back, that for us was not moving forward with our own growth and journey. And while we were in California, we organized what we called the Human Journey Institute. And we were teaching courses around and doing talks and things around there. And at some point, it was clear that California was not a particularly good place to have new kinds of things. I mean, it's just so much going on there. And we also need to be closer to our aging parents. We were in Oklahoma and Texas. And we had connection with the Baileys in Dallas, and Leah, can't think of her last name.
Early.
Yeah, was that?
Leah Early?
No, her name wasn't Early. I think it was somebody else.
Oh.
Anyway, so while we had enough money left, we were almost broke. We had enough money to move back to Dallas. And we did some work with the Baileys, and we started teaching courses to ministers and different things. And at some point in '83, well, one thing that happened was that Leroy Melky asked us to do some small group stuff and teach different groups there on a weekly basis, some of the stuff we'd learned in California. So it started like that, and that eventually developed into the house church. And we had people in the house church that were coming and meeting with us weekly. And then we decided, I can't remember exactly why, to incorporate, and we incorporated as realistic living, which really is like the Holy Spirit, living in tune with reality. And so in 1983, we incorporated with Marilyn McCord, as the three of us went and got this incorporation. And so that was the end of '83, so from 1984 on, we have been realistic living and started doing journals. We'd been sending out writings ever since we'd left the order, mostly to order colleagues. And then that eventually became the journal, which we sent out twice a year. And the little group that formed there in Dallas was the house church, so we've done that for how many years now? Since '84, we've had house church experimentation going on, which later, through the symposium, became the CRC, Christian Resurgence Circle.
The order had a certain love of psychology through Freud and Jung and some existential psychology from Rollo May and others, but we had not done the kind of psychology that deals with the human feelings. And so that was where we were really in arrears, was feeling-centered theology, or psychology and theology too. So that was a big thing, to study the feeling-centered psychologies and what that meant also for the states of being. Matthews was somewhat clear that you had to deal with great feels to feel your states of being, your spiritual states of being, but he had not lived long enough to get on top of the great breakthroughs in psychology either, or the great breakthroughs in ecology. So Joyce and I were finding ourselves growing into these things, growing into some new stuff about the feminist movements, and growing into a lot of stuff about the ecological aspects, which was very controversial with Order people. I remember some of the speeches we made with Order people about ecology when we first got excited about it, and the response we got was, you know, this was superficial tree hugging or something. You know, they just couldn't grasp that this was an edge at first. Of course, now almost everybody's come on board, but there's a lot of things that were happening to us from left and right and center that made us see the order life more critically. And I think now that there was something maybe appropriate for its time, but is not appropriate for the long-range future. I'll put it this way, that an order, a religious order, came into being in the Middle Ages and earlier as a reform structure within a hierarchical church of Christendom. And this allowed Christendom to grow and maintain its spiritual quality through the ages. But now that and that was true in the early imagination of the order. We went to the various denominations and asked for approval to be their order, to renew them. And so our first image was being an order of the universal church, authorized. We never did get many bishops to authorize us, but or cardinals or that kind of thing, but we got members throughout the established churches to accept us as an experimental force for their renewal, and many pastors delighted in having us teach them and their laity courses and help them build an educational structure in their churches, which amounted to something. But as this moved on, it gradually became clear that these old inherited structures from the Middle Ages and the Reformation, you could renew them in the sense like a rubber band. You could stretch them out toward renewal, but the minute you took the pressure off, these structures just went right back to where they were. And the issue became, what does it mean to build a form of Christianity that is self-sustaining for the coming century? And so this is the kind of distance we began to have. We didn't think the world needed religious orders anymore in the sense that we had been a religious order. Didn't need denominational structures in the sense that we'd had denominational structures. There's something, new wineskins had to be built for there to be a Christian community that had power in the cultures that we were going to have to be living in. So that was part of the reason, I guess, we never returned to the orders. We found it to be a kind of a box that we didn't need to get back in. We'd just gone somewhere else in our own lives. And we were carrying the religious side of the order very profoundly compared to other people in the order who carried more of the social mission side, which was also quite valid, and the wonderful things were done with that. But there's a tendency to become somewhat shallow spiritually if you don't also carry the nurture side. So we wanted to hold that together. We wanted to be missional, but we wanted to be missional from a profoundly spiritual depth.
It was,
And that was alienating from some aspects of the order for us.